Very good evening, one and all. I'm Karthikeya Kumar from Hyderabad, and I'll be the host for today's session. In fact, I'm also the presenter who will be taking care of all the presentation aspect. We have a lot of time, even we can interact in between, we can discuss. Glad to see a lot of faculty and students from various colleges across South India, in fact, from a part of North India also joining this session. Thank you very much for all your time and being so patient enough. So the main agenda of this particular session, I've been doing a lot of sessions. In fact, many of our already existing participants know this. This is my 19th webinar in the last 1 week. And almost in a day, I'm conducting at least 2 or 3 webinars. So the main proposal here is it's not only about knowledge sharing, it's also about, I'm just trying to identify in terms of creating some opportunities and also looking for some people with whom I can hire from this particular webinars, because I personally run a small corporate startup in Hyderabad, and it's been there since 2016. And moreover, I see a lot of different topics coming into my Facebook page and to my WhatsApp, like we would like to discuss on this. So by doing a lot of analysis and receiving the inputs from different sites, so today I felt like let me take up the task of having each topic. So I started doing on soft skills and then corporate etiquette, and we had cyber awareness sessions. We had some experts joining us, and today this session is again completely, and I can say rather it's a career oriented session for many people. In fact, when I saw the entire database of people who have registered today, so it's good to see that many of them are doing their research work. Many of them are already professors, assistant professors. Few of them are students. Now, the main motto of this particular session today, there are two things. Number one, how can we actually, I mean, why should we know about cyber forensic? Number two, what are the various career opportunities we have in terms of cyber forensic? And number three, what are the precautions to be taken in terms of this? Because when I talk about cyber, there are a lot of issues. So, and the primary challenge is, let me be very clear, there are two aspects I need to discuss. Even after knowing the primary aspect, even after knowing that Zoom has some security problems, people have been calling me and telling, Karthik, don't do sessions on Zoom. It's like you have people, I mean, you have someone hacking your system, etc., etc. But let me be very clear as far as my knowledge is concerned and what I have researched on this particular Zoom software, friends. Uh, when it comes to, I mean, many of us are from application background, software, and faculty from computer science department here. So now, what I'm trying to tell here is when we talk about Zoom application, it's not only Zoom, any application to that matter. Hacking an application is totally different. The main constraint why people were worrying about using Zoom today is that someone said they are hacking the sessions. In fact, I had a call from Netherlands by a professor saying, Karthik, we have conducted the live classes on Zoom, and the next day these people were sitting in Netherlands, and after a couple of days they had a call from one of the university in Germany saying like they could see the entire class video, the entire session in their classroom in a different way. So they were worried, like we don't have any students from that particular location who have joined the live class on that day. And how could my sessions go to the other location? It's not about how you it's not about how you protect your application only. I'm again repeating this. If really Zoom was so insecure, today 90% of the online sessions by many professional bodies are happening only on Zoom. Number one. And number two, just leave about Zoom. If we talk about Facebook, if we talk about I mean, going live on Facebook, going live on YouTube, going live on any other software like Instagram application, there are certain options which I can say that people are happy, I mean, actually using it. Even I have an application on my computer, one of my laptops. When I give my laptop to someone, people doesn't know that an internal hidden application is running always behind, which is actually a screen recording software. This screen recording software is something where I don't know who is recording it behind. I mean, like the people who are using my laptop will never get to know that a screenshot is getting recorded on the back end. Now, what is the purpose of keeping that? Very simple. If I really wanted to know who is actually trying to, you know, who is actually trying to use my computer, what are the screens they are using on my computer, what sort of security, what sort of improper information they are downloading. Even when you go to a corporate company, every company has an application in a visible and invisible mode that they monitor the employee's computer in a way that even the HRs issue pink slip and warning letters just based on that information, because we find many youngsters, or rather many people, who just joined the company and they are very much interested to continue using their Google, Facebook, and other accounts. Apart from the regular work, they do this. Now, what is the purpose of being in the company and what is it they are trying to do is the question here. How will a company get to know? So that's when they use the screen recording software. The manager will call one day saying like, Karthik, you started using Facebook, you started using Google. Most of the time you're spending on chat window, even if it is an internal communicator still. See, in my past 16 years of experience, whatever I have seen, whatever I have caught, I'm telling you this. I started, I started my career way back in 2004 as a software programmer in Java. Later part, I moved to different companies. I've been a consultant for some top-notch companies like Genpact, Bank of America, ADP, and as well employed with Genpact for a long time. Now, while working in all these companies and also out of my interest, I thought, let me also look into this, security aspect. I was more interested. In fact, I was a civils aspirant, which never happened from my end. Now, when I looked into this, there were a lot of queries that really made me to go shocked. So the first query primarily here is security. Today, the reason why I took this cyber forensic is, again, last week we had a session on cyber forensic. Cyber awareness by Mr. Mohan Rao Garu. Again, in fact, even I had a couple of points to raise, but today I really wanted to discuss this. And one more important thing, if the software is really so insecure, as I said, hundreds of people are using, and even I wouldn't have gone there to actually upgrade my software of Zoom, the plan, to a non-stoppable. Like earlier, it used to be a 40-minute session. Always there was a problem. I used to ask my participants, like, let us get back after 8 minutes, 10 minutes. Now there is no problem. I can use it continuously for 2-3 hours. Now, with what confidence I started using this is the kind of security precaution I have taken. Before I get into cyber forensic, let me give you some important terms, because I see a lot of women participants here, girls, and also even the gents also, the faculty. The primary thing many people forget while using social media is that you need to remember from your computer, where is the data going and getting stored. The data is actually going and getting stored in a third-party server of Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever you wanted to call it as. Now, when when you know that the information is going to such a third-party server, with or without notice, or with or without knowledge, so many people are still sharing their very, very, very personal information on Facebook. On Facebook. Why? Why are we sharing personal information? Why are we sharing all our photographs on Facebook, Instagram? Just name the soft application. Is it so relevant and secured? No, number one. And number two, the devices what we use, smartphones. There are very, very, very good experts. Okay, if you think that my phone has, actually got high-end security, my phone has got high-end security, and nobody can open my password. Yes, today you get me that phone. As a forensic expert, it takes 3 to 5 minutes for me or any forensic expert to identify the passcode of your phone and then open it in a span of 3 to 5 minutes. That's very simple. We have a lot of techniques. Now, talking all of these, let me get back to Zoom. Already we had a discussion on this. Now the challenge here is, my plan is allowing only 100 people to join. The most unfortunate thing is I have 200 people who have registered. So the other 100 people are in waiting. I don't know what to do now. Now let's get back to this discussion before I share the slide. When I talk about the application security or a browser security to that matter, I can have 100 options on my computer which protect my computer. I can have an updated antivirus. I can have an updated malware, tool which actually anti-malware tool which protects the computer from malware. I can have a lot of tools which really safeguard my computer. I can have a lot of settings where my system can really be safeguarded. But the overall question is, how is information still going out? I don't know how many of you have used private internet caves where you go sit outside in some internet shop. Even today, people do it. The most unfortunate thing is, even today, there are people who do the financial transactions from outside. They do a lot of, and one more important thing, they do a lot of transactions even in the public places. When you're moving in public, when you're sitting in a public place, make sure your screen is not monitored by someone. Number one, don't get connected with any private, the public Wi-Fi networks. That is highly insecure. And point number two, when you're using some network or any application, ensure your antivirus and system is properly updated. Why I'm telling all these things is, the primary area is, there are certain applications like apps, there are certain browser settings, there are some advertisement links that are sent to all the users whoever try to browse some irrelevant content on a website. And once when you click that advertisement or that particular link which looks very tiny, people say that click this, you feel this, click this, you get this. Let me be very clear, friends. You don't know who will monitor your computer at that particular from that particular point of time. Before week, I had a session. I was actually demonstrating a lot of things on my computer, the desktop which I was working. After demonstrating everything, but before I was ending the session, I was practically demonstrating how an intrusion can happen into your computer. I was prepared, of course. Trust me, my system got properly hacked and my entire data got crashed. My entire data. I don't know who was into my system, but it took almost 2 days for me to identify who are into my system. Okay. And how can I stop them? Of course I could do it. And I did not lose any data. I changed my settings. I changed my IPs, everything. Now, why I'm telling all these things is, there are a lot of people who use their laptops, computers without any minimum security knowledge. Now, why I'm telling all these things today is, there are two aspects. One should know what are the security precautions you should take in terms of cyber aspect. Number two, one should know what are the career aspect you have in terms of cyber security, in terms of cyber forensic rather. Many of us, I see, I saw a lot of people from the Google list, from the registration form, and people who spoke to me also, saying like, sir, we are doing our entire research on cyber security. We are doing our research work on forensic. We are doing our research work on ethical hacking. But how far are we secured is the question. My simple question here is, how frequently we change the socks of our shoes? For our legs. If you're not changing your socks at least twice, every alternate day, if you're not changing your passwords at least once in 10 days or 15 days, then trust me, we are going to be somewhere into a very big trouble. Forensic experts, yes, the biggest challenge with cyber forensic or ethical hacking here is that the things that should be done very legally with a proper approval and permission are done highly illegal. If I have to give an example, I still remember 6 months back, there was an issue in Hyderabad where 4 students from an engineering background have been caught doing improper ethical hacking. I can call them as black hat hackers. These students, when they did this, the police identified after some time, a couple of days, when someone gave a complaint. By then they already got amount into their personal accounts, and completely what happened here was, the people could not go anymore with that hacking, because the police have monitored from where the amount is going, what are the IPs they are using. So then they brought the fellows to the station. So fortunately, I was there on some case discussion that day. When I was there at the station, when I met the experts, they were telling me, sir, these people are from the engineering background. They haven't even completed their engineering. Now they started using this technology in an improper way. Now today, a lot of students are asking me, sir, can you teach me a practical way of ethical hacking? It's not a big thing. Practical way of ethical hacking, I have a lot of tools I can teach the people. But my biggest concern is how many of us will use it very legally and properly. That's the biggest problem. The way we misuse the technology, the way we misuse the skills, the way we misuse the provisions that are given to a human being are very, very high these days. Cyber forensic. If I teach you how I can find out the screen password or pattern in a span of less than 2-3 minutes, if someone starts misusing it, then it goes somewhere. I'm definitely sure. I want the people to be a grey hat hacker who are properly licensed with ethics. People are leaving that ethics and then going out. So why I discussed all these things before I started the session is very, very, very simple. Just because lot of issues are happening in terms of security over cyber, and especially during this COVID-19. If you remember, every alternate day there are cases that are coming up on the television sets. You see people even today getting calls from different parts of India saying like, we are from so and so bank, and you please kindly open this link where you just update your details and we'll give you the what do you call that, the RBI has announced, okay, regarding the loans and everything. And also, if you want to know if you want to update your bank details, just click this link and it will ask for a password monitorium. So it will ask for a password, and that password you enter here or tell us, will help you to update your accounts. Remember, if you get any call as such from the banks or from any unknown source, immediately raise a concern to 100, and then also raise a concern to the nearest bank saying like, why you people are calling me like this. Do not just blindly give away the OTPs. In the last 10 days, if you refer the cyber cases, there were lakhs of amount that has gone out of the people account just by giving away the OTPs 2-3 times. We should be thinking very, very, very much, other than your family members, why a third person is asking for your OTP. What sort of security am I using on my computer? Today, the only reason why I'm inviting the people to be on my system to participate in the Zoom thing is I know the tools I'm using on my computer are very, very, very safeguarded, and I can assure that there is no chance that I can get some virus getting into it or some malware getting in. But if someone tries to throw something onto my system, I have an alert screen where I get a message that some unwanted information is trying to get in. Everywhere I'm trying to keep myself secure. So how do you do that? I'll let you know. Just give me one quick minute. We'll start the actual discussion from here. Right. So the prime discussion for today would be on cyber forensic and precautions and careers. So this would be my contact number. I'll still again share it on this. This will be the simple agenda. What we are going to discuss for today, it is what are the cyber forensics, what are digital forensic, tools used in both, precautions to be taken, what career options we have. So these are something that we really need to. So I request all the participants to mute themselves and kindly put yourself off the video. Thank you so much. And one more important thing I would like to inform everyone. I see that many of the participants, maybe your colleagues and everyone, are not able to get onto this discussion now, just because the system did not allow more than 100 participants here. Not to worry, whoever have tried to log in or whoever are trying to whoever registered but still trying to log in, I'll get back to them. Since you're all registered, I'll send the participation certificate, number one. And number two, here is the link. I kindly request everyone, post this session, click this link, send a feedback, and you will get your certificates also, right? Any queries, just write me an email. I'll be answering. Thank you. Now, in a simple layman way, if I have to say, this is cyber forensic. So application of, if you look in the red letters, application of investigation and analysis techniques to gather and preserve evidence from a particular computing device that is suitable for presentation in a court of law. When we physically talk about forensic in terms of a physical murder or a physical robbery, the same procedure will be followed. We investigate, we analyze the situation, we have some methods of investigating the case, and then we gather the clues and we completely preserve the evidence, whatever we collected, in a proper protocol and format. And that is what we submit to a court in case of a physical crime. If somebody says that there was a bank robbery in my house, the primary team will come saying they're here to investigate the case. They're here to uh, completely identify what has happened. So they'll do the preliminary investigation. They will do an analysis of it, and then they will identify. I mean, they'll have a lot of techniques what they should follow. There will be a clue stream which will be coming along with them, and then they'll gather the information from our family. They'll gather from the neighbors. They'll gather from the scene of offense, and finally they'll collect everything and they'll submit it to the actual court of law saying this is what they have collected. The similar way, cyber forensic is something where we completely do the investigation, analysis, methods, and gathering all the information and preserving it in a proper format and keeping it on, I mean, submitting it to the court. And before I go to the next information, I humbly request all the participants not to draw anything on the screen. This is not a place where we can play around. Kindly don't draw anything. Okay, if anything as such, you just try to take it out. Right? So yeah, thanks for that. So here the application, this is what primary means. And today there are ample career opportunities when you look at cyber forensic. There are ample career opportunities. When you look at this, people will really feel like, if I show this, how much salaries you are getting, that really makes a big difference. Let us see what are they. Now, what are the different techniques? What are the various techniques that we follow in terms of cyber forensic? See, cyber is something where we don't do anything physically. It's all through a device and through online. So if I'm running some forensic method using my computer, it's not physically involved. It's just on air and on cloud. So there is a more security needed to preserve all this information. So I might collect data from a mobile. I might collect data from a computer. It's a desktop. I might collect it from a laptop. I might get the data from a pager. I might get the data from a camera, CC camera, a surveillance system. Now, why should we do this? Simple. In a crime aspect, in a investigative aspect, if I have to explain this to all of you, you don't know what crime happens from which device. So earlier we had a simple case where one person came, sir, without my notice, I don't know what has happened. Someone used my phone and all the transactions happened. This happened in a journey overnight. Now, the most unfortunate thing is we have a lot of technology systems in the mobiles, which we feel like, okay, really we can enjoy every system, every feature given on the phone. Artificial intelligence, the face recognition is something which really makes everyone very, very, very happy. Just keep the phone. It will unlock the phone by looking at your eye recognition or face recognition. But to what extent it is safe? You have a thumb impression. Tomorrow something happens to your thumb, or someone, when you're sleeping, someone might try to use it. I'll give you very, very minute examples where you observe all these things also. So again, I'll give an example here. My brother, one of my relatives' son, while I was sleeping, actually, he tried to use my phone. He asked me for it. I said no. So he was very quiet. After some time, he came to me again. He just called me. I opened my eyes and said no. I forgot in my sleep that my phone has a facial recognition. I opened my eyes and said, don't use my phone, just keep it away. And after 1 hour when I woke up, I saw that kid playing on my phone. How was it possible? He knows that there is a facial recognition on my phone. So that's when he tried to actually, get connected. He know that if I open my eyes, my phone will get opened. Number two, I was talking about the crimes that happen in terms of mobile pattern management. This was also shown recently in one of the movie. Now, if I give my phone to a real expert who is a cyber expert, he will have certain tools in his hand which will help him to identify the screen pattern in less than 2 minutes. But if I explain all those things in detail now, I know it goes in a different way. I really don't want to do that. Now, again, let us come back to this. So what we do here, what are the techniques we use in cyber forensics? Cross-driven analysis that correlates data from multiple hard drives. Now, my data has been thefted from my computer hard drive. It is being moved to a different hard drive, from there to actual another hard drive. So the data transmission is actually happening on multiple hard drives from one to one. So what sort of analysis that we are supposed to, and what set of data can we find out in terms of these hard disks, how the data has been transmitted is a one area. Live analysis, which obtains data acquisitions before the PC is shut down. Now my system is running, someone is trying to manipulate my system and take off the data. Before that the system is shut down, an expert who is really there in terms of cyber will be able to identify what is happening and who is doing from which particular location and what sort of information they're trying to capture. Many of our friends doesn't know, many of our friends really doesn't know that when you start working in the companies, still people try to insert a pen drive. People still try to send personal emails from their Outlook, which is an official email. An immediate trigger will go to the the cyber security expert, or rather the technology expert in the company, I can say, and they will send a message that you tried to transfer the data in an illegal manner. You're not allowed to do that. Deleted file recovery. This is one of the biggest challenges these days. To a certain extent, we can recover all the data, but in some cases, we will not be able to do it. Detecting deleted file recovery in the sense, again, not only the hard disk data, I'm also talking about the WhatsApp information. Many people, they do the chatting on WhatsApp, they take video calls, but they clear everything. They feel like, okay, nobody can see it. There are the ways where, we really can get everything on the screen again. Detecting data theft using stochastic forensic. Concealing a file, message, image, or video with another file using steganography. I'll share this PPT with everyone on my YouTube so that all of you can download it and keep for your any reference. Now, what are the 5 different phases of a computer forensic investigation? Let me come back to the computer investigation now. Policy and procedure development, evidence assessment, evidence acquisition, evidence examination, and reporting. Policy, see, these are the 5 methods which we basically follow in terms of investigating any such procedure where we can, sir, I'll definitely share my YouTube link by end of the session. Thank you. I again request all the participants, kindly do not draw anything on the screen. This is not a playground. Please kindly, with all the due respect, I'm requesting everyone, because that is really disturbing other participants. In fact, it's also distracting me. Don't put that lines and arrows on the screen, please. See, this is what happens. See, when you start distracting, when you start getting some new information on the screen, our interest automatically gets focused onto that new link or advertisement what we see, and we tend to click or we tend to delete or whatever the operation we can, and that's when our systems get hacked. Right? These are the 5 methods in terms, the 5 phases in terms of forensic investigation. As I said, again, I'm repeating: policy and procedure development, evidence assessment. Every step takes ample time. It is not like it's a 1-day job or a 2-day job. Today, if you go to any police station where the cyber investigations are done, you see hundreds of cases in pending just because they are done doing it. They are investigating the cases, just that people are not able to really get the real-time information. Physical crime, yes, it is possible. The one who robs the thing, he might take time. He will to travel here and there. But online, we don't know from which location who is doing the activity. And by the time we take it out, they have a lot of criminal ideas, how to get rid of that location, how to get rid of the surveillance, everything. So these are some of the tools which we actually use in terms of cyber forensic. You can find out them. You can find all the details. I'm presently using this AutoSpy. I have this tool which I actually use. So SansFit, ProDiscover Forensic, Voltality Framework, AutoSpy, Kane, Explico, X-Ray Forensic, right? I'm not focusing on the entire forensic part, but I'm trying to primarily focus on some of the key areas which are really needed. So digital forensic. Now, till now we were talking about the cyber, which is all about, the computer, I mean, the cyber aspect, everything. Now I'm coming back to the device aspect. So digital forensic is very simple process of preservation, identification, extraction, similar to the cyber aspect. It is almost the same. Now we are very particular about device. Why I took about disk forensic is whatever the hacking happens over a system, primarily the data gets transmitted from a hard disk. It can be a hard disk, it can be a USB disk, it can be an external hard disk, any storage device from where this entire activity happens. So using disk forensic, you see, it is primarily a science of finding evidence from digital media, like a computer, mobile phone server. Today, if someone says, "Sir, from my phone there was some crime activity, someone tried to hack it, someone tried to take out the information," yes, it will be. Now, how can we get to know? We need your mobile. We need to access your computer. We need to get into your network. We need to get into your server. We need to identify what sort of intervention has happened, who tried to intrude into it, who tried to actually manipulate that. So this, all this technology learning is not a small task. That's where you will be practically trained on all these areas by certified people, and you will be, from the day you complete the course, a surveillance will be there on you, like whoever have learned this, what are they doing. So if you want to learn all these courses, yes, you can learn them, but again, remember, 1.1% of misusage will lead us somewhere. So it provides the forensic team with the best techniques and tools to solve complicated digital related cases. Now, when I look at the statistics, and the cases that, as I gave some examples initially, when I look at the statistics here, and especially in the terms of vulnerabilities, that's the devices most vulnerable to cyber crimes. Our desktops are the key ones. That can be your office, that can be a private internet point, it can be your house, it can be any friend's computer. Even now, I can write a very small program, send it as a small hyperlink to your email, saying like, just click this and you will get a certificate. Just click this, your system is updated. I can tag it like it is related to Windows. I can relate it as some MS Office related or some of the applications. And you feel like, okay, really click this. And we really get some mails, Nigerian emails, or saying like, click for these jobs, click for this, click for this. Without our permission, without our authentication, lot of information is getting stored onto your computers. If you find any website which is really suspicious, don't even open it. How do you think a Toyota company or any other big company, to that matter, Dell or someone, can send a personal message in such a way where you really suspect it like a fake job? I get some messages from Air India, Toyota, saying like, you have been selected for this interview, just pay us 15,000 rupees as an initial formality. Once you get selected, your 15,000 will be paid back. Once you pay the 15,000, we'll send you a flight ticket, hotel accommodation, etc., etc., etc. I have ability to pay for all those things. Why should I pay to someone? People don't get this idea. They feel like, okay, someone is giving me a free airfare, etc., etc. They click it. Yes, you are. The kind of websites we browse now, 70% are from the desktops and laptops. Smartphones, 61%. When we are at a metro station, we don't want to use our mobile data, or for some reason mobile data is not working. Government has given some free free Wi-Fi. Chalo, get connected to that free Wi-Fi. Now that free Wi-Fi might hardly work for half an hour, 1 hour maximum, as long as you are in the railway station premises or in that particular zone. But do we really know how many antisocial things are happening in that zone? How many people are trying to misuse that network, trying to push some information where it might damage your phone, or even it might damage your personal data on the phone? That's the reason I said don't get connected to the Wi-Fi. Here it is, see, wireless access points, 50%. But what about smartphones? Apps. A simple way where a person can be trapped in a very, 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 very less time, okay, is just with a dating app. Download one dating app onto your mobile, or just try to know the information or a website about it, and you keep seeing continuously the advertisement scrolling on your mobile and laptop and desktop screens. That means you're already into their trap. They started sending you the messages, and it need not be from the same website. Similar websites. You keep getting lots of hundreds of ads. Click this, no credit card required, nothing. When they say no credit card, no money required, it's all free. People will log in, update their details. It says at the last page, only pay for 50 rupees and it's a lifetime free. They say, okay, 50 rupees or 100 rupees. Or they said, no, don't pay anything. Done. Even you don't need to do that. You don't need to pay, but just give them an access to access your computer. Their application is downloaded onto your device now. Now we use PhonePe, we use Google Pay, we store our passwords on systems. Now this fellow has every access to all our computers, our devices, our smartphone, tablets. We download the games, we watch videos. See, with the tablets, iPad, 53%, wireless points, 50%, server and server rooms. Take it for granted, a big company like IBM, Dell, etc. will have a high-end technology, Cisco also. But in the past, there were a lot of universities whose servers have been hacked just by the students of the same universities. Even today, that is possible by the students. From a college, we feel, as in a faculty aspect, our student is learning what we are trying to teach them. Or he is not learning or she is not learning. But do we really know what they are learning outside? Lot of courses across the market are available for 100 rupees, 200 rupees, 500 rupees. If someone is giving you a course on forensic for a matter of 500 or 1000 rupees, trust me, you are going to damage yourself. Do not undergo such courses. Number one. Number two, when I speak about server security in small scale offices or mid scale offices, when you start allowing the USB interfaces to work, when you start allowing some unwanted or irrelevant person to get into your server space and ask them to manage the server for one day, just that network administrator is not there, you're gone. The entire data is gone rather. We saw in lot of movies. Similarly, if someone is asking you in your office premises for a Wi-Fi password, probe it. Why do you need a Wi-Fi password? What are you trying to do? Now, what are you going to do then? You ask their computer laptop model. You take that information, put it on your computer. Then you give the access that who is using which Wi-Fi. I mean, who is using the Wi-Fi from which device. You should be able to monitor from about that particular device who asked you for the password. All these things are possible. It's not like they're not possible. Now today, if I'm looking at 100 people on my screen, I have the technology with me at my house itself, where I can track the people who are sitting at which point and what are they doing, which network they are on. Possible as a gray hat hacker, not as a black hat hacker or a red hat hacker. 47% of routers and switches. Why? How is it possible? If your router is not protected with a proper password, I'm not talking about the device, the router, what you use in an organization or in a house, also got a password. If your router password is breakable, anyone can intervene into that router network and they can start sharing the via internet, which is traveling through that router. If you don't change the password that is given by default by your internet service provider, and unfortunately, if that password happens to be very simple, if you opt for a 25 GB data per month, you will feel after 1 week that what did I do without using anything? My 25 GB of data is completed. Because the password, what you see, I mean, the access, what is given to you, okay, the internet access, the password, username and password are same. People will give a random try. And that's when they get to know that, okay, mereko mil gaya machli. Now they caught the fish. Your data is gone. They are downloading games. One day I gave access to one of my neighbor's kid, asking like, he said, uncle, just give me access for your password, Wi-Fi. I said, okay, take it. I typed in the password. I helped him. In fact, I did not share the password, but I gave him. I punched it on his device. But after some time, I started identifying my internet is going very slow. When I went and identified, they were actually playing this PUBG or some useless games or the overnight, and they're still downloading the people. And when I caught the device, I found somewhere close to 23 people were playing the device parallelly at late night 12 o'clock. and all on my Wi-Fi. He's not the only fellow. I didn't know that couple of people took the Wi-Fi password from my house earlier. So don't share your Wi-Fi passwords to anyone and keep changing your Wi-Fi passwords. You don't know who is going to get into your network at what particular point of time. Ensure that your routers and switches passwords are also changed frequently. Leading malware carriers, they happen via email. So they go to web, they go to others in terms of devices. So in terms of malware, I'm again repeating it. You might get some suspicious email. Do not open it. If you have any doubt, right click and delete it. Kindly do not open. If you find the subject line to be somewhat suspicious, never ever open that email. If you are getting a pop-up on the bottom right corner of the screen where I'm moving the mouse saying like, do you want this to allow the notifications? Don't say allow, keep a block. I suggest to pop up your notifications on the browser also. Don't keep it. Trojans. I have an antivirus here called Quick Heal. The day I practically tried the cyber issues, the only virus that has entered into my computer, the only information, that was a Trojan virus that really hacked my computer. There were 6 viruses from Trojan which entered into my computer just because I downloaded one application, which I know it is a highly riskiest application. Still, I tried to do it. I did it and it went off. I struggled for 2 days to get all my data safely back. Again, I reinstalled. Again, I went ahead and got all my security done. Now I am safe. When you look at the top vulnerabilities which were identified in 2019, see, unpatched components. You're free. The reason why people say go to Windows 10, Windows 7 is no more in usage. Even with other software, very frequently a real company, any company to that matter, which works very honestly, releases some patches in a legal pattern. You need to download that patch or an update and then keep your application and the device safe. If there is a patch or update that has come for Windows, yes, you accept it. But again, before you do it, you just check the details. Weak cryptography and then access control issues, giving access to unwanted people. And here, poor passwords. As I initially said, password. I see people setting the passwords very, 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 very easily. Any Tom, Dick and Harry can break this. Don't have it. Have a password which is very strong with at least 8 to 10 characters, which contains an uppercase, an alphanumeric, and the rest of the characters. But again, don't make a paragraph of the password, and don't save your passwords on your mobile. Don't save your passwords on a desktop of your computer, or don't save your passwords in a way where people has a transparency. They have a transparency to see what you saved. And most of the time when I'm traveling in a public transport, like by train or air, I see people sitting in a railway station or in train or in airports rather. They keep discussing about the financial transactions. They keep discussing about the unwanted security things in a public place where others are very keen to listen to that, and you don't know how they use it. I heard to a gentleman long back sitting in the airport. He was talking to his family or someone, I don't know, must be family. He was saying, okay, go open this particular diary. You have, the diary book. You have all these passwords. Go to this particular bank website. Username is this. Just give away the username. The hacker is very good in cracking the password. And number 2, when you're in a public place, if you're giving the phone to someone, ensure you're rubbing the phone cleanly on the surface and then give it. Don't allow people to directly touch your phone. Whether they keep it here, they keep it in the hand, they do whatever it is. And don't take someone's phone directly into the hand. If I ask my neighbor or if I ask someone who is sitting to me in the bus, if they are giving me a phone, what I usually do is take out my kerchief. I handle it with my kerchief. Even while returning, I rub it cleanly with my kerchief and then I'll give it back. I don't mind whether my kerchief has a sweat or something. But why I did it, my fingerprints are on the device. I don't know how that fingerprints will be used. Now, fingerprint is a key aspect in forensic. Many Telugu people, if you have seen the movie of Sarileru Nikevaru, In that movie, the expert, the hero who is an expert, he just unlocks an iPhone with this technique. Yes, today, if I give this phone to someone, there is no pattern lock on this. But if I give this phone to someone, this phone, my other phone, this has a pattern lock. If I give this phone to someone, okay, they can easily identify if he's really good at forensic. They can identify what are my uh, key patterns. So that is very, very, very important. And moreover, I see that few people are, just give me one quick moment. Yes. So I'm back. Now this is a one aspect. Poor passwords. Now here is the other thing. If you look at this, 47% of the small businesses had at least one cyber attack in the past year. 44% of those had 2 to 4 attacks. How is it possible? They are not using any high-end servers. They are not investing on Cisco routers or high-end routers. They are just using a normal physical desktops, which they call as a server. They don't use a legal software. They don't use much of the technology. And yes, it is easy to crack. It can be done by their own employees. It can be done by some external fellow who is, just trying to randomly do this. Ransomware is one of the biggest threat, right? Next. Let me give you some of the examples, what we usually refer in terms of digital forensic. Intellectual property theft, employment disputes, as I discussed, when it comes to employment, people will really confuse us sending some emails that I'm calling you from TCS or I'm mailing you from TCS. This is your access password. Just send us these details. We'll send you an offer letter. You need to pay this much of money. Fellow who never expected a job for the next 5 years will be happy, and he will throw the money to that company, and after some time he'll say, no one turned up, no one came back. Why? If you are really that skilled, if you are really that interested in getting a job, walk up to a company, submit your resume, and then get a job. Why do you want to pay to unwanted people or unknown people who are through online? You don't even know where they sit. They might say that I'm sitting in Hyderabad, but they must not be even in India. They might be speaking in Telugu, but they need not be Telugu people. Any language to that matter. See, I'm critically telling all these things in an investigative and a crime aspect, just because these things have been very much happening. And second important thing, a lot of challenges these days for women in terms of makeup challenge, photo challenge, dress challenge, cooking challenge. First, you challenge yourself with the smartphone and identify, are you secured or not? Sharing your personal photos on social platforms with the different poses, having some dress codes, cooking this, cooking that, cleaning this, washing this. If something happens to a celebrity, there is a background for them. What happens to a common man? Where are they going? It becomes a postmortem. Postmortem is something where the incident has happened. We cannot recover it completely. We cannot rectify. The only possible way is not to commit the mistake. Just keep it safe. Don't even try to do all these challenges. Especially women and girls. Do not share any unauthorized or authorized information to unknown person. If you still know them very personally, think whether you really need to share it or not. Maybe your relatives are somewhere sitting in US or UK. They might throw a challenge. They might say like, okay, send this photo, do this, do that. But end of the day, by the time the data gets transmitted from here to US or UK, in between there will be lot of mediators. There will be lot of hackers who will be waiting for this. I should say they're all like hyenas who will be eagerly waiting to hunt and eat something. Immaterial whether they're really hungry or not. If they find something interesting, if they're really ready, yes, like a hyena, they jump and take that information. Whether it is useful or not, that's the second level of thought. So don't make the hyenas to actually capture your information through this cyber mode. Fraud investigations, yeah, we do a lot of fraud investigations. We have our own techniques and methods. And inappropriate use of internet and email in the workspace, as I initially discussed, using the office mail IDs and office computers for your personal usage, downloading all the stuff. People will be very smart. People will be very smart. They download everything. They try to send that official information through their Outlook to their personal mail ID. This happens in many institutions. Today, I'm telling you, I'm warning all the colleges and institutions to keep a spy on this. Some XYZ must have done a lot of research work on some aspect. He will be giving his computer for some ABC, for some small helps, because the ABC has no computer. But is ABC really using it properly? Who knows? He might be capturing your data. He might be copying it to his pen drive. He might be sending it to someone. Especially in terms of research publication, all these things happen. You don't know where your data is going. You don't know who is manipulating it. You don't know who is pasting your data. A lot of tools and techniques have come in order to control all these things. Movies, even for movies, people have started doing the piracy in an easy way. One fellow will sit using a button camera or a mobile in such a comfortable way where people doesn't even know in the darkness that he is recording the entire movie in the theater. The similar way, now I'm talking to all of you. I can see people on my screen here. I can capture the information by using my screenshot tool, and I can keep all those photographs with me, right? This is how piracy happens in many places. This is how crime happens. Do not give away your device or computer or anything to anyone without proper security. If someone has asked your device for some uses, try to sit next to them. See what they're trying to do. You might trust them to maximum extent, but you don't know what goes wrong. When you're using PhonePe, Google Pay, I advise to log out and keep it, because recently there was an incident. I lost one of my mobile in which Google Pay and PhonePe were in open. After that, I learned this lesson. I identified that I found that the mobile is lost, but my Google Pay and PhonePe accounts were open on that particular mobile. Of course, the password will be a little tougher. A little simpler one. But again, how is that we are going to use the password is a question. Let me make it very simple for you. Let me make it very easy, very clear, or very simple for you. That do not give away the devices. You don't know what sort of prints are happening on it. Forgeries related matters, digital signatures especially, bankruptcy investigations. Bankruptcy. If someone is due to the bank, the fellow will call and say, if you don't do this, you'll get this problem. Immediately pay and get yourself cleared. So the poor fellow will pay so much of amount to the fellow who has called up, sending via PhonePe or Google Pay. But that is not actually from the bank. A bank will legally send you a letter if any problem is there. Issues concerned with the regulatory compliance. A lot of issues we have. We need to really look at all this. In terms of digital, disk forensic. Today you give me a hard disk in which the entire data is deleted, or it is rather crashed physically. Yes, still we will be able to sit and recover all those data with a lot of tools. It is not possible in a day or two, but it is possible in some time. If we can take some time in such a way, a lot of damaged hard disks and pen drives have been recovered. The data can be recovered. Network forensic. Someone intruded into your network, you wanted to know? Yes. Wireless forensic. Over the Wi-Fi. Database. As I said, your data is moving over a Facebook domain. From your computer to a Facebook server. Where is all this data going? Is it completely going to a Facebook? Is someone trying to hack it in between? So if that is happening, how? The bank data, universities information. How is it? I really wonder, a lot of frameworks that are still maintained by the universities and banks these days, are they really secure to maximum extent? If they're really secured with the framework, how are the hacking still happening with these universities, colleges, and banks? Forget about the personal thing. They don't have money, they cannot invest. How is it possible for a university or a bank or a college in not protecting, in not having a strong framework that some XYZ cannot intrude and destroy the data? I can write a small Excel code in VBA which can actually kill my computer and also the remote computer in a span of 1 minute. This is the level of damaging. So be very, very, very careful. Malware forensic, email forensic, memory. Memory is like clearing the data, like your not only temporary memory, over your memory devices and mobile phones. All this comes under this. Now, what are the key challenges we are facing by digital forensic? Increase of PCs and extensive use of internet access. I still remember that I know about a mobile phone way back in 2005. That was the first time I used a mobile phone. But today, a boy or girl who is just born, a baby, will not have Pharax or Cerelac unless or until there is a smartphone in the hand. That too with internet and a YouTube over it. So lot of unwanted. I mean, I don't say it's an unwanted, rather more than required usage. The extensive usage of computers and internet is really making the people to go mad at times. They don't know what they're doing. Easy availability, easy availability of hacking tools. As I just said, I have a lot of tools which I've shown in terms of forensic. A lot of free tools are there. You can download it. You go to Kali Linux. From Kali Linux, you can download. But when you look at all this, what is it we are trying to gain? We might do a crime today. We might feel like nobody can catch hold of me. Maybe today, may not be tomorrow, but definitely all these things are happening over a network. All the crime is happening over a small device, and that network or device will make us to catch hold of that particular person. Lack of physical evidence makes prosecution difficult. At times what happens is people actually rob some important computers. They take out the data and they physically damage, or they take it away in such a way like we don't even find that evidence. You don't know where the device is actually. So that's when we get some difficulties in terms of prosecution. The large amount of storage space into terabytes that makes this investigation job difficult. Now, if I stop recording this video, I know how big it would be. I cannot share it with everyone, but I can post it onto my YouTube. But at times, when bulk of data in terabytes has been damaged, and in order to identify some information, say for example, some 30% of the key information from 10 terabytes of data has been thefted. And if you want to know what happened with that 30% of information from this 30 terabytes or 10 terabytes of data, it's not that easy. Any technological changes requires an upgrade or changes to solutions. Last, when I come here, as I was telling, these are some of the career choices we have. You can get in as a, how do you get in? I'll tell you. See, you can become a forensic analyst in terms of incident response. You can be a cybersecurity engineer in terms of information security or network protocols. You can be a digital forensic analyst, incident management forensic analysis, and then you can be a cybercrime investigator with mobile forensic experience. You can be only a master in mobile forensic experience. These are some of the key roles, leadership roles in many companies. Chief Information Security Officer, cryptographer. Cryptographer, I should say, in terms of blockchain and fintech, in terms of cryptocurrency, and also not only cryptocurrency, that's in financial aspect, even in terms of normal data, and then cybersecurity analyst, and then cybersecurity. See, all these things, whatever you see on the screen. Today in India, if you start working with this, the beginning salary for a fresher or a person who joins these designations will definitely be a 5-digit per month, not a 5-digit per annum. 5-digit salary per month is what they get if they're really certified and knowledgeable in this. And you know how much you need to invest to learn this? If you really want to learn a basic cyber forensic or ethical hacking knowledge, trust me, the number what you see on the screen are even more than that. There are people whom I know who have spent lakhs and lakhs today on cyber security courses. In fact, I have also spent a lot of money on it. The reason is I was more interested. That's, training is my passion. Again, training in this area is my biggest passion. So in order to train or help someone, I should invest money. The biggest challenge is people think like, I get everything for free. I get everything in the easiest way. I can learn anything for free. Whatever you get for free will go away for very free. What is it we are learning? Today, I can refer you 100 institutes in Hyderabad where you go. In fact, I can make you to talk to the people who called me and said, we have joined some courses where they initially said they'll get us some use cases. They said that they'll get us some real-time examples and scenarios to learn the cases. But end of the day, they ended the course with only theoretical knowledge. So what is that you are learning from those institutes? If you really want to learn something, ensure it is giving a career out of that. Ensure you are learning something practically out of it. And today I have a batch of people who have paid me this money just to learn the course of fundamentals of cyber forensic and what are the career opportunities we have in this. Already the people are, I mean, the batch is going on. I'm teaching them maximum things in a practical sense, whatever are needed in a basic terminology, like for a fresher, which they can use in a real-time scenario once they get into the job. So my dear friends, on an overall aspect, cyber forensic is something, it's rather, I should say, not a physical, but an online investigation we conduct, where we work with the same physical clues team kind of online clues. We conduct every single thing, whatever a physical team does, but we investigate over online. We identify the people through online. We submitted the evidence to court in such a way that they can really feel that it's not a manipulated evidence. Manipulations can be done even online, but still, this is what happens. So you have to know more about this. I thought of giving some awareness, a lot of career opportunities. I really never wanted to discuss any software tool or anything on the online in detail, but I was just trying to show you what are the tools you use. AutoSpy, it comes with a dog symbol. You also have Nmap for ethical, I mean the IP management. A lot of software are available. Only thing is, if you really wanted to use that, is it really making a career for you, or are you trying to make some negative thing out of it, is what you need to question. And second important thing is, do not jump immediately by crazily listening to cyber security or cyber forensic, because it's not going to happen so easy. If you want to get into any of the positions what I have shown in the end, say for example, I'll show you this again. The screen got closed. I'll show you the screen and the career opportunities what I have shown. If you really wanted to step into these career aspects, probably, now I should tell you, if you want to become a forensic analyst, if you want to become a cyber security expert, even if you want to become a network security engineer, cyber security architect, anything, penetration and vulnerability tester, believe me, you need to spend at least 6 to 8 months minimum to understand the terminologies, and then you can get into a job. If someone says, come to us, we'll teach you in 1 week, 10 days, and you'll be a definite cyber security expert. Never ever try to take it so easily and accept that it is going to happen. It is not possible. A cyber security expert can be made only at least after 6 to 8 months or 1 year. Because the terminology, what we come across in this is as such. If I talk about network security engineer, it should start from the basics of networking. Starting from an RJ45, a minimum basic knowledge, to a maximum extent of dismantling or reassembling and then manipulating and rearranging the ports and in-depth study of those ports and how an IP can be configured to them. Lot of information. Even the course what I am running now, the batch who are already there in this for the 10 days, it is just primarily on one tool what we are learning, which they can apply only on their own computers. You might ask me, why can't we try on other systems being on internet? I'm teaching them in such a way that they cannot go beyond their computers. I have 5 computers in my house. I have 6 devices, 2 desktops, 2 laptops, 1 iPad, 2 mobile phones. With that tool, I can do any manipulation among these. If I want to go out of it, there is a different procedure, but that I'm not going to teach. You want to learn that? Yes, that is what you call a certification, which is again taught on a legal permission. Those who are doing research work, those who are into your PhDs, those students who want to make a career, I advise, take one topic from all this, one small heading: chief security engineer, incident response, network security engineer, any heading to that matter from this particular list. If you start doing a real in-depth research on it, it can help you to publish at least 5 or 6 publications. One small heading over here can help you to go with at least 5 or 6 publications. The reason why I'm telling is, it is so vast that you really don't even know how much time you're spending on it. If you start spending the time on networking, you go and ask a network engineer. Once he gets into a server room, he doesn't know when he will come out. Because the kind of work that is involved in networking, you will forget the rest of the world. In terms of security monitoring, when I say Chief Information Security Officer, yes, there are a lot of tools and technologies for a bad thing that a user can get onto this and hack my web camera and show someone else on my web camera. People who are seeing me now will start seeing someone else. And that tool is very small. The tool is very, very small. They're available. They're all free open sources on the website. But what is the challenge? You are trying to have some fun by hacking someone's camera, but you're forgetting that you are getting hacked by someone in name of that application, and your data is also going out. Right? So this is what I wanted to discuss. Thought of sharing this knowledge, since we have a lot of experts who are doing their research work, and in fact, doing a lot of publications. A lot of publications are happening, and all this. Okay, and thank you very much for all the participants over here. I'm really sorry that the other 100 participants could not be a part of this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mail the YouTube link for everyone who registered. So all the 215 participants will get the YouTube link over their email, and the certificates. What I'm going to do here is very simple. The only thing you need to do is share a feedback on this email address. And regarding the certificates, I'll share a link to all the emails where they'll get a Google Drive link. Open that Google Drive. You will see all the images as a folder with a folder name of today's session. Open that. On the top right hand corner, you will see a symbol called preview. Open it. Just click on it. All the certificates of 216 people will be shown. Just identify your certificate over there and download it. That's more than enough, because it takes a lot of time to individually send it to everyone. And one more important thing, my dear friends, all of you, those whoever are here and off the Zoom also, I'm again reiterating the thing. Kindly use a dummy email address when you are using a Zoom session. If you look at the flyer, what I have shared, it is not my actual email address. What I shared is a dummy email address to which I will never get any official information like personal mails, banking information, recruitment information, any information. I don't get anything. If some damage happens to that email address, let it go. I'll put it on self-assassination. If someone tries, it will automatically get damaged. That is how it is. Do not try to continue using your personal IDs for Facebook or, I can say Zoom sessions. Lot of, you don't know the vulnerabilities, and a lot of messages are rolling around the globe like this is secured, this is not secured. Get the information from an authorized, certified expert whether it is secured or not. Blindly telling you if Zoom is not really that secured, why will the top companies and government officials use the same Zoom? Why a lot of people are using it Zoom? Zoom is not only that. Only problem is any company can give browser security, any company can give application security, but they cannot give the security for the device which is hacked in an invisible mode. Now, someone can actually take a screenshot of my entire session now. You don't need to do that. I'll send it on, I'll put it on YouTube. You can take it. But if you look at my content, I did not publish any such information which is really confidential or which is really scary. With that confidence. And I always advise, unless or until it is needed, accept the host. Don't put yourself on a video mode. Again, that's a risky part, especially women and girls. Kindly do not do that. We will definitely, we will be able to, you'll be able to get monitored by someone, right? So thank you very much for all your patience. Thanks a lot. And what I would like to do is, since it's more than an hour now, I welcome all the queries. I welcome all the questions, discussion, anything over the email, what I have shared just now. Okay, that is something, again, a dummy one. What I gave again, nothing to worry about it. So you can send the queries, we will respond. I really love to work with a lot of people from this expertise stream. I have a lot of plans for my future. Okay, so in this particular course, what you see on the screen, I'm taking these people for whoever completes this course, they will be working as an intern with us for 1 month after the course. And they'll also have a career guidance, and I'll be giving some personal references to work. In fact, I have some requirements, so I might hire them for my own organization. So share with the people, and all of you will get the YouTube link of this entire video. So any feedback you would like to leave, I request people to speak one after one. Anything you would like to speak?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I have a doubt. Actually, I'm a management student.
Yes, sir.
So, is the job only certain for some like computer science students or something, or IT graduates?
You mean to say this course?
Yeah.
No, sir. This course is mostly useful even for you people, because I'll tell you what. Good question here. When I speak about management students these days they are also supposed to know about technologies. The reason being, if you look at the majority of the companies, artificial intelligence has included, in fact it penetrated into the management stream in such a way, many HRs are losing the job just because they are not aware of the technology and they don't know how to use the technology. So similarly, if you are aware of this particular tool, tomorrow if you are into recruitment, or if you are into, may I ask what is your specialization in management? Hello? Okay, the person who asked the question, this is for him. If you are from HR or finance or marketing, whichever the stream you are in the management, but remember that you are still dealing with hundreds of people information in terms of recruitment, in terms of financials, in terms of marketing. You must be a marketing person dealing with insurance companies. Now this valuable information of the customers is getting stored onto your computer. So how secured your computer should be? If you suspect something on your computer, to whom you should raise a question? What sort of vulnerabilities are there? What sort of precautions to be taken? Do you frequently do any discussion with your next level people on security aspect? Lot of things are there. For even for management student, not only cyber aspect, it's important to understand the technologies, because the penetration of new technologies into the market is high. So kindly focus on technology aspect, immaterial whether if you're we are from a BTech or non-BTech. Right. Any other discussion, or can we end up the session? I'll be still available to talk to you, everyone. I can respond on the email. I'll be glad to talk to you all. So thank you for all of your time. I hope the information has been valuable.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any questions or any queries, you can make a note of my number and mail ID here. You can visit my website. And this is what, and I'll share the entire presentation link. You can see it. The entire video can be seen on YouTube. Okay. So thank you very much. So it was a great time with all of you. So signing off. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Bye.
Thank you all participants.